In this video, I'm going to review Knees Over Toast Guy. We're going to go over the main concept that I see in Knees Over the Toast Guy that makes him successful, and also the main problem. At the very end of the video, we're going to discuss whether or not you should do something like Knees Over the Toast Guy's program. So stick around till then. But before that, welcome to the Anatomy of Therapy. I'm Dr. John Sobolski. I've been a chiropractor now for 10 years, and I've been paying attention to the Knees Over Toes guy. I get a lot of questions about him, so I want to take the time today to answer some of those questions, hopefully cover a bunch of those things. And then I've got, 6 exercises here. A couple of these are doubles, these exercises. We're going to go over these today and kind of figure out what, again, the main concept is with Knees Over the Toes guy, and then the problem concept. Let's get into it immediately. If you haven't hit the like button already, hit the like button. Help people find this channel. I really appreciate it. Let's talk about Knees Over the Toes guy. Okay, so this is Ben Patrick, Knees Over the Toes guy, and he does all sorts of stuff, right? He's squatting, he's adding weights to his squat. He's got these crazy weights that are attached to his feet. You've probably seen him all over the place. Do I do this? What is he doing? The next one, this looks dangerous. Should I be doing this myself? I get questions like this. Are these exercises bad for me? What's the deal with these setups? I'm not that shredded. Will they get me this shredded? I want to answer a lot of these questions, but let's get immediately kind of into what I think the concept is with Knees Over the Toes guy. His real secret, if you really want to talk about it, is gradual exposure. It's basically like exposure therapy. If you think about it in terms of like with heights, right? So just imagine, excuse me, imagine you are afraid of heights. Gradual exposure therapy would have you go up one flight of stairs and then come back down. You would go up 2 flights of stairs and you would see, hey, going up 2 flights of stairs is not such a big problem. Ultimately, by the end of the therapy, you would find yourself up on the roof and not afraid of heights. That is exposure therapy. Now, we take that concept and we apply it to, let's say, the knees. Okay? So let's go over this very first one. In this first exercise, we have Mr. Ben Patrick here on a slant board. Let's make that bigger. Okay, so we got a slant board back here, right? And so you've got his toes forward and his heels kind of elevated. What this really does, this slant board, is actually distributes the weight evenly from the heels to the toes, okay? That's really all it's doing. Now, it is also kind of pushing your weight forward, which is naturally gonna happen. Your knees will go forward as you squat down, right? And so this is just kind of prefacing your body and being like, hey, body, guess what? Our knees are going to go forward. Now, what I mean in terms of gradual exposed therapy is that at first he does this exercise without a weight. Just his body weight, right? Gradual exposure would say then we do the exact same thing, except, boom, we add ourselves a weight. And he's holding the goblet squat position, so we're doing an anterior bias again. There's anterior bias in the knee, so he is addressing the front of the knees here. This is a part of the program where he would unload it and do a couple squats here, and then immediately after, to progress it, what we do is add weight and do the exact same thing. It's just a natural progression. This is the simple concept that makes Knees Over the Toes guys work really good. It's kind of like in this first one. This is probably the best example. Nordic negatives. Let's switch here. Okay, so we go over to Nordic negatives. This is a classic exercise, and it's also a very self-limiting exercise by itself. In other words, you won't be able to do this exercise if you can't do it, right? And so you will kind of fail to go all the way. It's not like a bicep curl or something. The Nordic negative, and here we go with, so let's just talk about the negative. You would go up and try to let your body fall forward as far as possible, right? However, it's not easy if you do not have strong hamstrings back here to allow yourself to fall forward. So what you would do is gradually expose yourself, the gradual exposure therapy idea again. And this time we're going to give you a little bit of a support here, right? So he goes down and he lets himself slowly go down, thereby allowing his hamstrings to build more tension into a lower position. Then from there, he goes to fall onto these pads. Now he's going to go very quickly in these. So you notice he'll take the pads away. And so he's doing less. And now he's taking more pads away. So again, there's the next exposure. Now, not only can we take the pads away, essentially removing the kickstand, but we can start to now add weights, okay? So this is exposure therapy, taking away the crutch and then slowly adding in more and more tension so that you can progress. So he's going slow with the weight, he drops it and he comes back up. Now we've got it a negative on another negative. Can't speak today. He's going negative on the negative, right? So this is how he's progressing further and further and further, and how he can do crazy things like this and they kind of start to look normal, right? Or crazy things like this one here in a second. We'll talk about this and how he gets to this. So all of these things you need to just think about. He's getting gradual exposure therapy. We are starting somewhere and then we're gradually building into a more sustainable and foolproof way. But it is a slow and progressive thing, so you need to be able to divest enough time and patience into these programs. Okay, let's go to the next one. So we did the squat idea. So before he had no weight, he then adds the weight and he's squatting, right? Pretty simple, fantastic, and wonderful. Let's go to this one. What the heck is going on with the weight on the bottom of the foot? Why is he pulling his leg up here? What is going on with this exercise? So this is called what he calls the hip flexion standard, right? And what he's doing, I think this is called animal feet. The links are all over the place. I'll put one below in the show notes. If you haven't, click the like button and that other red one to subscribe, or leave a nice comment below. That would be great too. But these are the animal feet, right? And so what he's doing is simply letting his leg fall down, and then he's flexing his leg up. Pretty simple, and we're doing that repetitively. Now, the trick is, this is another way to enter into the gradual exposure therapy. And like I said, stick around towards the end. We'll talk about the problem with all of this. And there's not many, but it is an interesting one, I think. So exposure therapy, with the knees, we can flex the knees down to the ground, or we can flex the knees up to the hip. So this motion, this knee flex position here, is not dissimilar from this knee flex position. We've just gotten there from the opposite chain. One chain is open right here, and the other chain is closed. So we are working on going down, and we are working on pulling ourselves back up. That is the other angle towards this exposure therapy kind of concept that the Knees Over Toes guy uses very well, uses incredibly well in terms of programming. So he's a great programmer. He's got some awesome exercises. So this is going to be hip flexion. As we said, he's just going up and slowly down. This is working on the hip flexors rather than this kind of working on the hip flexors as the quads. This is actively working on the hip flexors as you lift up. So it's the same kind of movement. This is the bottom of the squat, just the position sheaved in a totally different way. So it'd be like kind of going up on the stairs and then just taking the elevator to get up to the stairs. There's other ways to kind of expose yourself, basically. But the idea is he wants knee flexion. How can we get knee flexion? We can squat down into it. We can add a bunch of weights and squat down into it, or we can pull up into it. Not a big deal either way. Cool. The next phase I want to talk to you about is going to be the single leg. He does a lot of single leg stuff. The ATG split squat is probably his most well-known one, I would say. But a lot of them, he talks about reversing out of knee pain. So this is another exposure therapy. So we're exposing one leg at a time. Clicking on the wrong thing, John, focus. So he's doing one leg at the same time, so he's not doing two legs. When you are doing two, you are assuming that your torso, that your spine is not twisted in any way, that your feet are perfectly symmetrical, and that you're going to get the same thing through both knees. That rarely ever happens. We're all built a little bit asymmetrical, and you really need to train things asymmetrically because you are asymmetrical. You have you're dominant in one hand, you're dominant in one eye. If you play soccer or something, you know that you're dominant in one leg. So we should address the body asymmetrically as it is. And this will specifically work, especially if you notice a difference on one side. I'll often tell my patients, working out unilaterally will actually help you balance things out because you'll get to see that there's a difference when you do this leg versus when you do, say, the opposite leg, right? Now, what this one is doing is, again, trying to get some more loaded exposure. We got a little weight on our shoulders this time. We're trying to get a little loaded exposure to one knee as we dip way far down. So you can see he's up on this guy. We've got the block and the slant board. So this knee is going to get now exposure that it doesn't actually get, say, in this position or in this position, right? It's not really even getting exposure like we got in this position. What is this one? Oh, yeah. So we are getting a single knee exposure while we are loaded off to one side and we are elevated and letting that knee dip down, okay? So it's just another way to build exposure and strengthen up your knee. Excuse me. So yes, that is what we're doing with this one. It's a very easy one. You go back and forth. You can almost see what I really like at the very end is how the hip kind of drops and how this hip will kind of stay up, right? That is fantastic. We're working on fixing a hip hike as well with this one. But one of the things with this is that you just got to do it over and over. That's my cat Marcel. Not a big deal. He wants to be a part of everything. Whose cat doesn't? Okay, so single leg step down. What you're trying to do is load the quad, load the knee. Again, this is anterior knee, and then this guy, like Nordic negatives that we were talking about, this is a little bit more the posterior side of the knee, hamstring strength, which is a decelerator of the knee. Okay, last two that we're going to go over is going to be this guy. So we've talked about hamstrings in terms of, or we've talked about the knee in terms of the front of the knee, and then we got to the back of the knee finally. But we also want to talk about lengthening the entire backside. So this would be like a hamstring stretch, but it also means you have strong hamstrings and you have a strong glute. Not only that, he's not only knees over the toes guy, you can bulletproof your knees, but you could also bulletproof your back with this guy and with this guy. Let's talk about them. Okay, so this is generally like the the hamstring stretch. The hamstring stretch that you do, you've done the hamstring stretch 1,000 times. It doesn't really work. It doesn't stick. You've got to do the hamstring stretch over again. Why is it that you have to do the hamstring stretch over again? I would argue because of the concept that you have not put that under some sort of graded exposure, and you have not progressively got your hamstring into longer lengths at larger capacities. In other words, I'm talking about loading it with some kind of weight. Now, with this one, it's really not that much weight. He's got maybe 20s, 25s in his hands. And so, yeah, he is reaching down. He is on an elevated position. So with his ankle here is dorsiflexed up. That is going to lengthen the calves even more. Now he's also at a positive or at a negative so that his hands can go further down than his feet. So we're able to lengthen everything back behind here. But you'll notice when he does the exercise, not only can he do the exercise, but he can lengthen it and control the length. That is kind of the key with this one. He can do it and he can control it. So what he's doing is slowly going down, which is the eccentric part of the exercise or eccentric movement. So all the muscles in the back of the body here, the glutes, the back, the lats, the traps, the shoulders, he is really rounding his back out and trying to eccentrically lengthen everything through the backside, the hamstrings, the calf. All of it is being lengthened very, very slowly. So he is controlling that lengthening process. He's not just trying to lengthen it, but he's trying to control the lengthening process. It's another way of graded exposure of lengthening your hamstrings and your back and your hips. Okay, he's added some weights. So really what he does is use the weights to hold himself down there, because in this exercise, you'll see he doesn't pick himself back up. We just kind of restart at the very beginning. You've noticed the editing trick. But that's part of it. You've noticed that in this exercise, when he got the weight, here we go, where he's got the weight here, and then he takes it and he drops it, right? Then we go back to this guy, and what happens is he slowly rolls down, so you feel the slow and long eccentric stretch of your back, of your hamstrings, of your calves, all the way down to the Achilles, to the glutes, a lot in the back, I'm guessing. He's gonna feel tons in the back. And then he's gonna hold this bottom position. And these weights are going to keep him down there because the body naturally wants to come back up. All this is on tension through the back, especially the hamstrings. So once you've built that tension up, it's going to want to release, right? It's going to want to let go. Hold on one second. This cat, goodness, this cat is unbearable. Always in the way. No, don't do that. Okay, here we go. So he's lengthening everything, then he holds the weight down to keep the low back and the hips elongated for as long as possible. So you're in this position, it is safe, it is okay, but then you hold it and let it burn. You'll get a lot of burn. You see in the back of his arms, you're gonna get a lot of burn in the back. You're gonna let that open up and you're gonna hold that stretch. You're fully elongated. You've got a weight down here to kind of keep you safe, keep you pulled down actively, and then you just have to breathe if you can, right? And then try to let that stretch just kind of burn and hold and just be and just enjoy it. So these are another way to gradually expose yourself to a longer and longer strain. What's the next way that you would expose yourself to more load? Is you would get more weight. Straight up, you would get more weight. Now he's changed the leverage. He's holding it with his elbows. This is a Zercher, so this is going to put more strain on his serratus muscles, which you can obviously see there. But it's the exact same idea, right? He is simply using that weight to progressively load his hamstrings, his back, and in this one, he's actually working on coming up, which is crazier. So that is why these exercises, the problem is if you see these exercises and you say, hey, let me just go out there and try that, you need to know that he is gradually and progressively developed from one place to get to this. He didn't jump straight to this. He's basically doing it after the fact, right? So he's already built it and gradually worked his way up the stairs. And what you're seeing here basically is him up on the roof, having conquered his fear of heights, right? But you're going to do this again. You could, if you wanted to do this, you could take away the block and you could put less weights, okay? This is simply a hamstring stretch, but just progressed, gradually exposing the backside to more tension and then the front side to more weights. And now he's not doing it at the end of his hands like he was doing it in this one, right? Now he's got it on his elbows, so he's going to put a very different strain on the back of his shoulders. You can see the different strain through the lats here. The lats are very different in that one versus in this one. The lats are very much let go and not engaged. He's got more like posterior shoulder, posterior rotator cuff. That is really what is going to be pulling him there. But you can really see that because of the amount of weight, his lats are very much active here. That's this little line that's going whoosh, right through there, right? Those are the lats. So he's just going to put a different strain on the back, and he's also going to, that is a great one, he is going to lengthen the lats in a little bit of a different way as well, because again, the load is a little bit different on where he is carrying it. And then he's going to bring it back up. So not only is he lengthening his lats there, he's strengthening his lats there. You're going to have very strong, again, we've talked about elongating as much as possible. So now he's all the way down. Once you've elongated that, are you strong from that end range? This is another concept we're not going to get into. Do you have end range strength? If you have end range strength, I guess we are going to get into it. If you have end range strength, your joints are healthy. So the ultimate test of a joint is at its end range. If, for instance, you take your finger and you pull it all the way kind of back here, it should be kind of nice and bouncy at the end, right? If you have a bad joint, like say you turn your neck one way and you feel it kind of pinch on the side, that is not a good end range. If you have a healthy end range, you will have healthy joints. So let's just say you already have healthy joints. What you want to do is to train that end range so that you can solidify that healthy joint, or you push the limits of how far that joint can move and how strong you are with that joint. So that is really the idea with this kind of flexibility training. You're going to go as far as you can, up and down, and then you're going to see how much of that you can, how strong you are at length. So we have a spectrum of movement, right? And we can move through this spectrum. Some people's spectrums are slowly getting further, and those spectrums are not bolstered, i.e. like just a hamstring stretch, and they'll kind of come back. So when you get that stretch like we've got here or we've got here, not only does he open up that range of motion, but he also solidifies it even further with the weights here or the slant board down here, which is extending the length here, or putting the weights here, which puts more tension on the back, right? So we are solidifying, we are increasing that range of motion, and then we are solidifying it with the weights so that we can maintain it and keep that range of motion. That is the concept. The problem is that people want results quickly, okay? And if you can stick to the concept of gradual and slow progression, you can go a lot further. We kind of talked about this on a podcast episode. I'll put some links to it above here about gradual and slow progression. We did in our All Things Squat episode. That should be out recently. Why Squat, I believe, is the cover of it or whatever. Maybe we did 2 weeks ago. We talk at length about working out and the exponential and the compounding factors of what it means to work out. Knees Over the Toes guy has this in spades. I highly recommend his work as a chiropractor. Gradual and slow progression. Get some progress and then keep it and maintain it and keep pushing it. That is his key. That is his trick. Big fan. Again, check out the podcast. We've got some links below on that. Check out the Squat podcast. We talk about this exact same concept if you're into it. Hit the like button below. Leave a comment. And yeah, y'all have a great day. Peace.